Welcome back. As you can see, you've joined me at something of an awkward moment. Welcome to Pixie Hunting 101. I've already found a flower forest, though that name is perhaps less than accurate given that very few flowers and basically no trees are present anymore, and am in the process of trying to farm these little buggers for their dust. There's only, 3 problems with that. The first is that their drop rate for the stuff is 50%. No looting, no extra bonuses, no luck modifiers. It is a straight coin flip. The second is that the spawn rate for these things is abysmal. They aren't rare, per se, but they certainly take their sweet time. The third is that they fly, their movement is more random than a tweaking squirrel, and their hitbox is measured in angstroms, so unless they are close to the ground or you happen to have gone on a 2-year semi-competitive FPS bender a while ago, your only option is saturation fire within a 5-degree arc of their present position, and praying. Did I mention that each pixie dust is only 9 minutes of flight, by the way? Yeah, it's only 9 minutes. I'm gonna need, probably a stack of this stuff by the time I'm done with this episode. Okay. So maybe it wasn't quite that bad. It was still annoying, though. My plan for the end is basically the same as my plan for everything else, with the added requirement that at all times I keep my flight status effect up. As an added precaution, I will also have bound warp scrolls on my hotbar at all times, allowing me to, in theory, evacuate anytime I feel like I'm in danger. Though with aphasia being a thing, who the heck knows. Thanks, Lycanites. The final piece of the puzzle is what I will politely refer to as overwhelming firepower. Literally, because that's what I named it. This particular gem of a weapon is brought to you by the combined nonsense that is Advanced Mending and Infinity. Mending and Infinity can't normally go together on a bow. Advanced Mending has no such problem. I don't anticipate intentionally engaging in melee combat for any reason whatsoever. I also spent a great deal of time re-rolling my baubles with all the dungeon junk that I picked up, so I'm about as tanky as I can get for this stage of the game without farming out strength and vitality. But it should be good enough. Really, I'm mostly concerned about the void. Nothing that I can't see coming a mile away should be able to do enough damage that I can't avoid it in time. This setup does, of course, ignore the problem that I have no idea where the end portal is, but that should be a pretty easy fix given some time. As expected, locating this portal is so trivial that it is almost ludicrous. 2 Ender Eyes is enough to let me triangulate the portal near one of my forests of waystones, and then I walk out in its general direction and encounter some random Lycanite mobs that only spawn near vanilla Minecraft dungeons, and gee, I sure wonder where the end portal is, folks. Naturally, finding the fort is the easy part, actually finding the stupid portal takes longer than getting to it does, but I get it done. Did you know, by the way, that Advanced Efficiency 5 and Versatility Automatic let me insta-break basically everything in the game? Yeah, I do now. You better believe I'm going to be relying on this. After activating the portal, this is it. This is about as good as it's going to get for me, so there's nothing for it but to potion up, hop in, and pray. Here goes nothing. This fight is quite honestly the distilled essence of an anticlimax. And once I get the barf, I just sort of spam the poor girl into the ground before grabbing a bit of Tiatite, her egg, and all the scales I can find before scooting back home to upgrade. The dragon egg and biotite can be used to craft a Shield of Honor, which is probably the single strongest defensive bauble in the game, in addition to massively mitigating explosive damage and granting a passive resistance effect, which is nerfed. In RLCraft, by the way, it only gives 5% mitigation. The shield also negates every 5th stick of damage you receive, meaning it also on averages carries something like a flat 20% damage reduction across the board. It's very good. The scales can be combined with a Nether Star and Bezoar to grant immunity to withering and poison. I'm short on blaze powder again, so I couldn't get undying on the shield, but it will come in time, and right now these are the strongest baubles I have available to me. With those out of the way, it is full speed ahead on looting the place to the ground. As before, I only really care about a few things. I need a shulker heart and some shulker boxes for gear. I need crafting runes, assuming I can find any, and I need enchantments or enchanted gear that I can deconstruct. Everything else is just simply not worth the space it takes up in a chest. Oh, okay, that's not entirely true. I do steal a couple Sinizite lanterns from a dungeon because there's no sense in taking another trip back to the Nether, right? The first really interesting engagement happens at a random set-piece dungeon with a bunch of Chaos Elemental spawners. When I said overwhelming firepower, that name was not a misnomer, and I just kind of let loose. Aiming is for people without infinite ammo who are capable of standing still, and I'm being jerked around and flying so much that my arrow velocity is pretty random anyway, so I just apply the shotgun approach. This one engagement is basically a summary of everything that I do in the end for the next 8 hours. Engage in combat, apply Daka. If something is moving after the fact, apply more Daka. Rinse and repeat. I don't really ever bother messing around with melee combat. I have a turbo shotgun, and gosh golly gee darn it, I am gonna make use of it. Pretty quickly on, I find my first vanilla end city, and at that point, it's game over. The end is quick enough to render that I can crank my view distance all the way up to 32, and end city dungeon candidate spawns are all placed on a square grid, so all I need to do is fly in a straight line following that grid, and I will be able to spot these things from miles away. Once I get all my equipment processed, the results are looking promising. My first run, which lasted maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours, netted me an excess of mending books, 3 advanced mending books, and enough curses of possession to equip my final armor set with some to spare. I also got a smattering of advanced protection, more elytras than I will ever need, shulker hearts for my Ankh shield, and enough runes, complete with duplicates, that I can afford to make a rune reader and start paging through the recipes. The first crafting project, though, is the Ankh shield, and this mostly ends up being just me hammering random things on an anvil until it's done. Ankh shields are really easy to get enchanted since there's so few enchantments that can actually apply to this kind of shield, so in short order I get my Unbreaking Mending Possession Cursed Shield kitted up with Burning Shield to set attackers on fire, and Empowered Defense for a chance to the shield not being broken by an attack, with Natural Blocking on top for a passive mitigation effect. Once that's put together, it's rune reading time. Runes unlock a number of useful toys, but for right now I only care about 4 pieces of armor that make up the Golem set. This is the tankiest armor set in the game in terms of sheer damage mitigation, and when a full set of Master Golem armor is equipped, it passively grants potion effects that improve the armor even further. As such, I consider it a hard requirement. The only problem is that the recipe for each piece is randomized and can include any vanilla obtainable item in the game. I think, with one exception of the Dragon Egg, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. It turns out I had the runes for the helm and boots already, so I made a note of what those required with NEI for future hoarding purposes, and moved on. Most of the things are easy to get, some of them are significantly less so. Case in point, the Record Disc 11 is like one of 50 records that can drop from creepers now, and the only reason I have one is because I looted it from a dungeon and kept it, knowing that I might need it for golem armor later on. While I could craft these 2 armor pieces right now, I don't have enough advanced protection to enchant it, so I opt to instead hunt down another batch of pixies and return to my end dimension looting spree. I still need some more advanced mending, and some runes for the chestplate and leggings, and I also am going to need a small mountain of the aforementioned advanced protection, and looting end cities is one of the fastest and safest ways of finding almost all of those. As with many things, overwhelming firepower handily solves the pixie purge problem, and shooting them down isn't much of an issue anymore, but if it ever was one, I have a solution. I very quickly returned to my spree of financially motivated, I'm not really sure what to call it anymore. Actually, saying hit and run accidents is close, but they aren't really accidents, so I guess hit and run on purposes would be more accurate. Anyway, that'll do. I quickly returned to my spree of financially motivated hit and run on purposes. Isn't that just mugging, though? Whatever. Dungeon run number 2 is enough to firmly net me enough enchantments of every variety I need except for advanced protection, and it even has the courtesy of supplying me with a couple of the 4 unbreaking tomes from Quark that I will want for my armor. These are not optional. Mobs in the Lost Cities hit you for lots of damage lots of times, and even Unbreaking 4 is less than I feel comfortable using, but it's the best you can get, so I'll have to make do. What the run does not net me is the crafting runes that I need. I have most of them by this point, but I'm still missing the ones for the chestplate and leggings, which is deeply annoying. This run has, however, amassed me enough advanced protection to put a maximum level enchantment on 1 piece of armor. Given the choice between the helm and the boots, I obviously choose the helm, so after a marginally annoying scavenger hunt, boom, 1 helm. Rerolling golem armor pieces requires steel ingots, which requires sinazite, which means I have to go back and strip mine the nether for a little bit. Or just use my X-ray dragon eyeball, I guess, whatever works. The Nether doesn't really scare me all that much with my current loadout, but I still make a point of not engaging with it because it traumatized me once like 5 games ago, and I will never trust it again. Endgame armor enchantments are pretty easy to explain in RLCraft. Unbreaking, Advanced Mending, Advanced Protection, Advanced Thorns, and Curse of Possession, because it's harmless and prevents other curses from being applied. Once those are on, add whatever extra enchantments apply to the armor piece, and you're done. For helms, this is Aqua Affinity and Respiration, even though in all likelihood they will never matter because I am Discount Poseidon. Once those are on, it's a simple matter to slap on an Unbreaking Tome to upgrade to Unbreaking 4, and then reroll it into a Masterwork quality and slam it on my head. Boom, done. Of course, this means it's time for another pixie purge. You would think the things would have gone extinct at this point, or moved. But apparently not. Alright, dungeon run number 3. I need Advanced Protection and Runes. That's it. I have all the other enchantments I want, I have all the baubles I will ever need unless I find a resistance ring, and more raw resources than I know what to do with. Protection, runes, and a ring. Everything else can be left behind. Yes sirree. Absolutely nothing else is required. There's no point in stopping to pick it up, it's utterly useless. Why are you doing this to yourself? During my adventures, I discover a cool little puzzle room. Being a highly intelligent individual, I definitely solved it myself the first time I found one, and didn't have to look up the location of the 12th hidden orb, only to realize that it was right above the deposit location for the rest of them in plain sight. Anyway, this lovely little creation rewards me with a heart of diamond, along with a bunch of other random junk. This diamond heart is an ingredient that I need for one of the last 2 baubles I'll be getting, so that was nice, but the rest of the loot is largely unremarkable. If I get a second one, I guess I won't have to farm out hearts of diamond or resistance rings, which will be nice, but the real fun was doing the puzzle the first time. More hours of flying around in basically zero danger, looting places to the bedrock, nets me all the runes I need, as well as enough advanced protection for a second enchantment, which is great. The problem that is less great is I still need 2 more advanced protection 4 enchantments on top of that, and the Golem Pants for some reason decided that they wanted 2 copies of the Music Disc 11, meaning that this whole set in this world requires 3 of the stupid things. This is less than ideal. The chestplate also requires a rabbit's foot, but I consider that a fairly minor problem in the grand scheme of things, since with advanced looting 3, it should be annoying at best. My solution for the pants problem is, in typical Goose fashion, massive environmental devastation. As part of my level up reloaded passives, I have one called Treasure Hunter, which has a chance for any mined dirt block that you personally breaking, not an enchantment, so no tunneling, no lycanite tools, you have to break it, dropping random items. Music discs are one of those items that can drop. This would normally trivialize the problem, except that there are approximately 30 bajillion music discs in this mod pack for literally no reason I can discern whatsoever, and this greatly dilutes the pool of the things. Still, this is substantially faster than creeper baiting, which would be my only other option, so I go with it. After trying to employ this strategy to get my records, I came away from this with several valuable bits of information. First, while this is an excellent way to get music discs, it is a less than excellent way to get specific music discs. If my numbers are indicative of the average drop rate, you'd better be prepared to dig out a good 20,000 blocks of dirt without tunneling or lycanite tools for each disc that you need, which is a level of graping that seems less than likely to go over well if you're playing on a server. Second, digging is a decent way of getting tools with Curse of Possession, since you automatically pick them up when they drop. Third, mob spawners can drop from dirt. They only spawn pigs, but I guess you could make a pig farm? Maybe? I don't know, that seems like something people would try and do. Ironically, the records end up being the least of my troubles. My boots required me to get a block of red sandstone stairs for their construction. This necessitates yet another goose chase for yet another super rare biome that I haven't found yet, and I once again had to search for the stupid thing by hopping on Flappy and beelining it in a random direction for an hour until I chanced upon one. Once I find said biome, it's not over, because then I have to also locate rare blocks of red sandstone, since you can't craft it from sand in this version, to make the stairs. At this point, we may as well just add mushroom tears and panda skin into the mix, because it seems like this series is just going to turn into a who's who and what's what of every rare item in the game. Rabbit feet also ended up being shockingly difficult, and not just because of the general paucity of the stupid mobs. Rabbits have 4 feet. But despite this, not a single one that I killed was intact enough to drop even one, apparently, which necessitated and I use that term very loosely, the crafting of an advanced looting 3 spear with otherwise nearly endgame enchantment simply because I happen to have spares of everything lying around. This is basically the RLCraft equivalent of solving problems by smacking people in the face with large wads of cash, and I endorse it wholeheartedly, except for the fact that it still wasn't enough and I had to resort to looting a dungeon for one. A Greg Tech level of obnoxious microcrafting, re-rolling, and enchanting later, and I am now the proud owner of a full set of Masterwork Golem armor. I only have enough enchantments to finish the chestplate, but that's fine, because the chestplate is the most important part. As with all of the other pieces, it has the standard enchantment loadout of Unbreaking, Advanced Mending, Thorns, and Protection, Unbreaking 4, and Curse of Possession, but unlike the other pieces, it also has 2 other fun enchantments. The first is Inner Berserk, which increases damage dealt when at low HP. Given that the difference between low HP and World Deletion is relatively slim, I will try not to use it. This is where the second enchantment comes in. Strength and Vitality gives you a substantial percentage increase of additional hearts based on your maximum HP. I have a lot of maximum HP, and when wearing this chestplate, I now have a lot of HP. With this, I might actually be able to survive a hit or two from endgame Lost Cities mobs. Of course, the shopping list isn't complete. I need 2 more Advanced Protection 4 books. While I could try and grind them out with a Guardian farm or breed villagers, that sucks and is boring and I hate it. I could go back to the end and attempt looting more cities, which is marginally less sucky, and with my new chestplate, turning me into a flesh monster poses basically 0 risk whatsoever, but it also took like 5 hours of looting to get the first 2, and I would prefer to avoid that if possible. I, instead, have a different idea. At the core of the problem is the fact that I just need lots of high-level enchantment rolls on lots of armor pieces. Looting dungeons helps because dungeon gear meets this criteria, and enchanting my own helps, but it's slow and expensive. Instead, I'm going to do the quintessential RLCraft thing and just go beat up a bunch of mobs for it and steal theirs. Roguelike Dungeons is in this pack. Part of their mechanic is that they spawn lots of mobs who wear lots and lots of high-tier enchanted armor and are quite happy to drop it when they decide to have a nap in my general proximity, so let's just go steal theirs. This idea works, sort of. In principle, it's sound, and the armor these mobs drop is good enough to get something going, but there is just so few of them that it's difficult to scale up. Really, the problem I'm running into is I've just kind of outgrown the overworld dungeons at this point, so rather than try and stick it out, after a couple failed attempts, I just bail on the idea and then go back to farming pixies and looting end dungeons. It's slow, but now that the literal only thing I care about is advanced protection, going through them is pretty quick. This last round of looting secures me all the advanced protection I need and then some, and also nets me a resistance potion ring, which conveniently saves me from having to farm out stupid little stonelings. This is not particularly complicated since there's ways of making it trivial, but they are obnoxious and I'm glad that I don't have to do it. Another Greg Tech of micro-enchanting then sees me sporting endgame pants and booties of the Golem variant. As before, they're all equipped with Advanced Mending, Thorns, Protection, Curse of Possession, and Unbreaking. The pants only have 2 extra enchantments, Agility 2 for decent overland movement speed buffs, and Evasion for a chance at an attack entirely being negated by dodging, which has the annoying side effect of throwing your character in a random direction every time it happens, but damage mitigation is damage mitigation, so I will survive. The boots, however, have a laundry list of extra enchantments. Wall running lets me run on walls, sort of. It's not terribly useful, but it has niche uses when I'm not flight enabled. Lightweight is a feather falling variant that raises the fall damage threshold and gives you a buffed jump height. Sliding lets me preserve some forward velocity when I switch from sprinting to sneaking, which has some interesting uses when engaging projectile firing mobs with a bow, but is mostly just put on there because I think it's funny. Underwater Strider, Advanced Feather Falling, and Double Jump all seem fairly self-evident, and also not shown here is High Jump because I forgot it and had to add it later, but it also does what you would expect and makes you jump higher. This armor set is also one of the few sets in the game that grants a completion bonus for wearing all 4 pieces of it. This one gives me Diamond Skin for additional damage mitigation, and Repulsion, which automatically dismounts any mobs that attack you by using the riding mechanic. This makes me immune to not only Lycanite Darklings and certain scrape and run mobs, but also the Cyclops' grab attack and Dragons' bite attacks. Because I have a full Masterwork set, these effects are raised to the 2nd level, which is a nice little bonus for us completionists. So, this is armor done. This is as good as it gets in the base mod version. Dragonsteel isn't a thing in the base version of RLCraft, for those who are wondering, otherwise I would have considered that. I still have one bauble that needs a quality roll adjusted to undying, but my baubles are also almost done as well. The shopping list grows shorter. Next on that list is another trip to the Nether. In order to summon the Amalgalich, I will need items from another boss, which itself requires another boss, which itself requires something called a Demon Soulstone. The easiest way of sourcing one of these is, of course, the Nether. And killing a boss, it figures. I also need more glowing agates for rerolling and some other exotic buffs and baubles, so it would behoove me to take that little trip downstairs. This is fine, though, since at my current power level, I am essentially a walking extinction event for anything that happens to come from somewhere as banal as the literal depths of hell. While there, I also found a fun dupe glitch. For some reason, breaking bone reed doors with my Matic drops 2 of them. No idea why. Don't really care to find out. If anyone needs doors, though, I got you. The first Lycanite dungeon I find in the Nether is the wrong kind for Demon Soulstones, sadly. By the way, what is it with mobs using fire-based attacks on someone who is immune to fire? You'd think these things have never played Pokemon or something. Speaking of which, I do get a pet dragon from it. I think. Maybe. It's kind of a weird-looking dragon, but it is a thing that I have now, I guess. Ah, here we go. Knock knock. Anyone home? Oh, good. I was wondering if I could borrow a cup of sugar. And also your soul. Yeah, sorry about it. I have this ritual recipe that just absolutely needs a demon soul, and they do not provide any substitute. Oh, hey, perfect. Thanks so much. I'll be sure to give it back at some point. Anyway, that demon soul, plus some fancy rocks, buys me a fancy rock that I then slam down into this lovely looking thing to summon some random red dude. I guess. I would love to say that the supposedly third hardest boss in the game is this great big spectacle of awe-inspiring power, but the random trash mobs are honestly more threatening, and even then they are more annoying than an actual health hazard. It turns out that random red dude forgot to take his blue pills in the morning, or possibly just got out of bed, because I spend the entire boss fight deploying overwhelming firepower in his general direction while he just kind of stands there and piddles out green snot balls that aren't moving fast enough to actually hit me. I don't even bother bringing good arrows to this fight. They're just the same bog standard vanilla arrows that I spam out to deal with trash mobs in the end. Red Guy drops like 12 hearts when he dies. Side note, 12 hearts. My dude. Your circulation must be phenomenal. You have exactly 0 excuses for what I was just part of. So I used 4 of those, another random mob soul, and some more rocks to create a fancy different kind of rock, but this time grape flavored to spawn in the next boss. Of course, my luck being what it is, the stupid things ends up being a champion variant with the special ability of giving me crippling 2 to 3 second long game hitches. And very quickly in, I opt to dip out of the fight to reload my game. You can do this at any point, by the way. Progress is saved and the bosses don't despawn. So I just flew right back into the arena and started it up again. Anyway, instead of an extremely tall red man with ED, this boss is a giant 5-head spider that surgically replaced its junk with a chain gun. Good night, everybody. Seriously, you cannot make this stuff up, folks. The chain gun ding-dong would be marginally problematic if I wasn't the walking equivalent of 4 M1 Abrams tanks duct taped together onto a tungsten brick, and also coincidentally equipped with the game-changing technology of owning a shield. But I am, so it isn't. The boss fight supposedly has stages, but to be quite honest, I just kind of ignore them in favor of walking up as close as possible and tactically spinning my nunchucks into its nads until the poor thing falls over. It's a simple loop. When the chain gun spins up, block. When the chain gun is cooling down, take him to Pound Town. If he becomes immortal at any point, find the random trash mob giving him a shield, and shoot in their general direction until they fall over, and repeat steps 1 through 2. Simple stuff, and after a couple minutes, Rule 34 Jimmy Neutron goes down without too much trouble. My next awe-inspiring technology requires me to run around like an idiot collecting berry bushes and engaging in primitive foraging behaviors in the middle of winter. Because I haven't paid my hypothermia tax this episode, clearly. This particular bit of tech is brought to you by the powers of Walmart Dionysus, the deity of brown paper bag adult beverages, and probably a very popular figure among the 5-head spider crew for reasons that I am not going to touch on. Rustic has a realistic, by which I mean real pain in the butt, adult beverage brewing portion of the mod that provides drinkable beverages that grant various kinds of buffs on consumption. Naturally, all but 2 of the effects are entirely useless. Grape beverage, made from, you guessed it, grapes, extends all potion effects by 30 seconds, which I consider to be basically useless, but Wild Berry Beverage, made with berries from random bushes, has the oh-so-interesting effect of raising the intensity of all active potion effects by 1 to a limit of 3. This is fantastic. The problem is, in order to get the stuff, you have to first construct a berry farm, then harvest berries for a few majillion years, crush them in a tub with your feet for a few bajillion more, stick the juice in a barrel to ferment, and when that's all done, anything with a too low of a quality has to be thrown away because it can have negative side effects, which basically means 90% of your work is wasted on your first brewing run. Fun! While that's going, I am not idle. Astute viewers may have noticed that I suddenly began keeping small children in glass jars mounted on a wall. These obnoxious little squeaky whiners are pixies, and can be harvested every once in a while for an entirely different kind of pixie dust, which is used as a crafting ingredient for ambrosia. Ambrosia can be eaten for a number of beneficial potion effects, and grants luck, absorption, jump boost, and strength, all at level 3 for 3 minutes. But I'm most interested in the luck effect. Unlike in basically every Minecraft version ever, luck has an actual use in RLCraft that isn't just for fishing. Race rings in the Lost Cities have a higher chance of spawning if the chests are open when the player doing the opening has a higher luck stat. Since all of my baubles are earmarked for keeping me alive, this means the only source of luck I get is from potions, and ambrosia is the strongest luck effect source in the game. Think of it like a damage mitigation effect. The less time I spend looking for my dragon ring, the more likely it is I will survive the engagement. Something else I have to be aware of is a mechanic called potion sickness. If, at any point, I have more than 12 positive potion effects, each game tick there is a 1 in 1,000 chance of various kinds of bad things happening, such as randomly being hit with a negative potion effect, or most concerningly for me, losing all my buffs when I least expect it and dying. This is bad news, and means I need to strategize about what buffs I want. I passively will always have Resistance 3, Fire Resistance, Diamond Skin 2, and Repulsion 2 because of my gear, and there is no way to remove those without switching out baubles, which is not something I'm terribly interested in. Night Vision, at least, can be toggled off since I won't need it to engage mobs effectively, and I can just bump up the lighting in post for you folks. I will also be under the effect of Flight and Ambrosia, if not at all times, then at least at most times, which means I will also have to save slots for Flight, Strength 3, Luck 3, Jump Boost 3, and Absorption 3, which kicks me up to 9. Wild Berry Beverage has a chance of granting Inebriation, but that isn't seen as a buff, and all of the effects given by the Scrape and Run mod are negative buffs as well, so no worries there. So this leaves me with 3 slots. I opt to go for more effective HP buffs. Guarding for more armor is a no-brainer, as is Health Boost for a flat extra 6 base HP to be multiplied by Strength and Vitality. I can also get Iron Skin, which is a rustic potion effect that does basically the same thing as Guarding and Diamond Skin combined, even though it has the same name as another potion. So these are different, don't get them confused. That said, all of these will require beverage buffing, however, so I make them for their longest duration at the lowest strength. Speaking of which, Wild Berry Beverage has finished brewing, and I was lucky enough to get a decent enough batch to use for culturing, even though 6 of the 8 barrels were clinically unsafe to drink. This is a mechanic where you seed future barrels of the stuff to clamp the quality value and prevent it from being random, and effectively it means that I'm always going to have good beverage to use in the future. It's also the only breeding-like mechanic in this game, so it makes sense that I plowed face first into it. Beverage breeding aside, with my buff routine designed, this is it. I am as tanky as I can get. Fun fact, for those who are wondering, my passive % damage multiplier from baubles and resistance, which only gives a 5% mitigation per level in RLCraft, and passive level ups, is somewhere around 0.4, meaning that 60% of all incoming damage just straight up disappears before it even touches me. If I estimate my soup of armor and armor-granting potions mitigates 98% of the damage, this means that between passive mitigation, evasion, parry, natural blocking, the level-up passive blocking perk, and my armor rating, I'm probably taking somewhere on the order of 0.4% of all incoming damage to my health pool, giving me an effective HP value of a little over 6,000 points per body part. My body parts, in total, have more than 2 times the effective HP of an Amalgalich. I will need to do a little more legwork if and or when I get a dragon ring, but that I will save for the next episode. Conditional on me surviving this little adventure, that is. Since the next episode may very well be the last of the series and will most likely involve me wandering around barbecuing eldritch horrors for hours on end while searching for rare items, I'm going to do here what I did with my New Horizons base building episode and turn the non-progression part of the next video into an ad hoc Q&A session. If you have any questions about RLCraft, what I do, why I do it, and why I didn't do the things I haven't done, please leave them in the comments of this video so I can respond to them while I'm looting. As with the New Horizons question set, I am not going to be responding to personal questions, though. With all that out of the way, thank you for your time. I hope to hear from you in the comment section, and I will see you again in the next video.